Montreal finally trades Max Pacioretty. What do you make of Jeff Molson, the owner, coming out and saying he did, in fact, demand a trade or ask for a trade?
Right.
Like, why did he feel obligated to throw that nugget out?
Well, because it's a bit of a gong show in the market, and I think probably important for him to put out what he feels is the truth. I will tell you this, despite what everyone is saying on both sides of this, I do think there was a time last year where Max Pacioretty would have appreciated a change of scenery. Okay, let's not kid ourselves. But at the same time, I think some of that came.
Okay, but what is that though? Is that a requesting a trade?
Right.
Or not?
I don't think it was official. At the same time, I think that came to that point because he realized before that his name was out there. So it's sort of semantics to me. At the end of the day, this was headed for a divorce. Let's not get carried away and lost in the who said what. These two parties needed a divorce, and they needed it, frankly, before camp started. And so that's why this trade happens. Interestingly to me, I don't know what you guys think of the deal, but I talked to a couple other front offices around the league today, and they kind of thought Montreal got a decent return if you agree that they were basically in a corner. They already had a trade with LA fall through. They have a player who, it was going to be drama all year, which means that Montreal's trying to trade him. And at the end of the day, they got Nick Suzuki, who
Tatar
some people are high on.
rounder.
Tatar is what he is. I mean, I don't think he'll ever be more than a 20-goal scorer, although they got a rebate on his salary. And a second rounder, given that team was right in a corner, not a bad return.
This is what we were kind of talking about even off air. Like the trade to LA, it sounds like, again, we're not privy to numbers, but it didn't sound like he got anything more financially
Right.
from Vegas and less term. So
Because Pacioretty signed an extension with Vegas, 4 more years at $7 million.
Yeah, so $28 million over 4 years, $7 million AAV. It's actually 10.5 right at the front. It's front loaded and goes down to 5.25, but $7 million is the AAV. It depends on what you truly believe about what happened with LA. I think the Kings started at 6x6 is my information, which I don't think Pacioretty would have ever signed, but I do think LA would have gone a bit higher, but I don't know that it went that far. In the middle of all this, Pacioretty changes agents from Pat Brisson to Alan Walsh, so that in the middle of nixing the deal to LA, he's also changing agents. So a lot was going on that draft weekend in Dallas. So I guess what I would say is maybe in LA there would have been a longer term deal had he stuck with that scenario. But he did get a lot of money up front in a shorter term deal with Vegas, where there's no state income tax, by the way.
right.
So
Which is a huge
it really
benefit
depends
for
how
them.
you look at it. Yeah.
What I've not understood for a number of years from Montreal is why it seems to me they create this friction with players and then these artificial trade deadlines. Like it happened with Subban a few years ago. His no trade kicks in. We've got to trade him. Everyone knows that for whatever reason they decided they got to trade him. They had to trade him, and then he gets traded. Galchenyuk, we've tried everything. 2 coaches, center, wing, first line, fourth line. Got to get rid of him. And now Pacioretty, you got to get rid of him. Like why do they keep putting themselves in this position where it's like you got to trade him, and then you get a haul that's okay, and it's like, well, they actually got a pretty good haul considering.
Right.
Well, they put themselves in that position.
Well, and that's exactly it. There's a great case to be made here, whether you want to be the glass half full or glass half empty guy when analyzing the Habs right now. For example, I can tell you that some people look at their offseason and actually say, love their first-round draft pick, young center. They didn't give up the first-round pick for Ryan O'Reilly, which is what the Sabres wanted. A lot of GMs who knew they might be on the firing line would have actually made that deal to save their job. He didn't. Fine. So a lot of people feel in terms of the big picture, long term, they had a decent offseason in terms of not doing anything dumb. But I think when you step back, and if you want to be Captain Negative, you got to say this. What are they right now? Who are they? A year ago, they signed Carey Price to an 8-year extension because they're still in contend now mode, right? I mean, otherwise, why would you do that? So I think if you're going to go on the negative side, you ask yourself, well, what's going on here? Are they rebuilding? If they're rebuilding, they just have a goalie starting an 8-year deal at $10.5 million a year at the peak of his career.
Which would counter the idea that they can rebuild.
So I think that's what's interesting to me. Max Domi, very young player, is excited. I talked to Max last week at the player tour in Chicago. You wouldn't believe the enthusiasm coming out of him. Like, I don't know if there was a more excited player of all the players there than Max Domi. He can't wait to be on that stage. He says, I grew up with my dad being an icon in Toronto, and I relish that stage. I can't wait. So there are some interesting elements in terms of youth and some of the things they've done.
But on paper,
But exactly, this is a team that at best, if Carey Price reestablishes himself, contends for a bubble playoff spot. That's about it.
That's how I
That's
see
the
it.
ceiling, in my opinion.
I agree with you. I think
and
on
so-
paper they look terrible to me.
Yeah. So it feels like they've decided to sort of retool here, rebuild, whatever you want to call it.
But Pierre, what does that
But where
mean?
does that leave the goalie? And when Shea Weber's healthy, the anchor defenseman.
Yeah, don't they just go up to Bergevin and say, why do I want to be a part of this?
Who?
Price and Weber, like, aren't they?
Well, what are they going to do now? I mean, you just signed the deal. Weber's got a monster deal with a lot of money left. They're going to play. They're going to give a great effort. But
I think what you do if you're Carey Price and Shea Weber, and those guys are fierce, proud competitors. I know you guys know those guys, especially Shea Weber. I think you see how this year goes. At some point, Weber's back in the second half. If they surprise people and contend, do you leave in the offseason next summer saying, okay, who knows? I mean, the league is close. Vegas just went to a Stanley Cup final. So Colorado just made the playoffs a year after they should have been relegated if it was European soccer. It is a funny league. I'm just saying. I mean, we always sit here and we're, a year ago at this point, if we would have said Colorado made the playoffs, what would have been your reaction?
yeah, it's asinine.
So I'm just saying, we it's radio, so you love to have a strong opinion because that's what you guys get paid for, especially Noodles and O-Dog. But I'm just saying, it is a league now where the margin of error, the gap between the good teams and the bad teams is smaller than ever. Who knows? Stay healthy, get a break. Carey Price stands on his head. He can make up for a lot of deficiencies on that team. Let's see how the year goes. But I do think next summer, going into the offseason next year, I think that organization has to probably look at where Price and Weber fit into this overall picture here.
Where does this situation, like the Pacioretty's gone, Subban's gone, there's been a lack of success of late. Where does this put Marc Bergevin in this whole situation?
I mean, listen, I think you have to think he enters the season on thin ice, for sure. I think some people thought...
But what does that mean? Everybody knows what they have now. We all discussed that they're probably going to fight for a playoff spot.
Yeah,
So
that
what are
might
the
be there.
expectations?
Yeah.
So what, if they don't do that, he'll get fired?
No, I think, again, yeah, I mean, I think if you're another year out, if you don't feel, if you're Jeff Molson, that the pieces that are coming in are going to put you over the hump in terms of, okay, I could see what you're doing here 2 years from now, 3 years from now. Like I said, people feel they had a great draft. But you're talking about things, Suzuki, not helping you today, right? I mean, these are things for 2-3 years down the road here.
I think Brian made a good point in our last hour about Jeff Molson being very involved.
Yeah, he talks too much. He's like, you're not the
but not
G-
even-
I know you're the owner. You have the right, but just...
But not even talking. I think he's a guy who's involved. He's like
architect in a
Daryl
way.
Cates in Edmonton. I think there's guys that are involved. And I come back to a situation where it's more like, do you remember in Philadelphia, like Paul Holmgren would make these big splashes and some of them would work. Brice Galoff, no go. And his job was never in jeopardy because it seemed like it was coming down from farther up.
And these markets, Noodles, as you know from playing in Calgary, when times are good, you talk to players, oh my gosh, when the Habs were 100-point teams 3 out of 4 years, just a few years ago, those guys were so happy to be there in that atmosphere, in that rink.
Yeah.
Now it's the Leafs feeling that fun. When the Canucks were on their cup run, when the Flames went to the cup final, Edmonton. But when things are bad, it's just two extremes in Canada, man. It's just things get overblown. I mean, when the Leafs were the 18-wheeler going off the cliff for a few years, that was happening in other markets, but it was happening in Toronto, so it was a bigger deal. And you guys hammered them harder than I think another team in a smaller market for the same things, but that's how it is. So now Montreal's going through that, right? I mean, at the end of the day, Montreal's not going to finish last in the league. There's going to be teams that are going to be worse than them, but maybe not that many teams more scrutinized than them this year.
Pierre LeBrun, our Hockey Insider in studio.